Here's something nobody told you about the Apple Watch Series 10. It's the thinnest Apple Watch ever made, and that one design decision changes almost everything about how it feels to actually wear it every single day. Stick around because we're going deep on this one. If you just want the bottom line before your coffee gets cold, here it is. The Apple Watch Series 10 is genuinely the best Apple Watch Apple has ever shipped. The thinner profile is a real upgrade, not a gimmick. The display is bigger and brighter. The new health sensors are meaningful. If you're on a Series 6 or older, this is an easy yes. If you're on a Series 8 or 9, the upgrade is real but not urgent. That's the short version. Now let's get into why. Opening the box, you get that usual Apple experience, clean white packaging, everything sitting in its place like it was designed by someone who takes origami very seriously. Inside, you've got the watch itself, a magnetic charging cable, and a documentation card that approximately 0 people will read. No power brick, which is standard Apple at this point. But the moment you pick up the watch, something immediately registers. It's light. Noticeably light. The aluminum version especially feels almost surprising in your hand, like your brain expects more weight and doesn't get it. The case has this polished finish that catches light really well, and the new wider band attachment system means the straps sit flatter against your wrist than previous generations. The display, even before you turn it on, looks larger. Apple stretched the screen toward the edges in a way that feels like a genuine step forward. First impressions are strong. This feels like a device that went through a real design revision, not just a spec sheet update with the same body. Right out of the box, the Series 10 makes an impression. Let's talk about the specs that actually matter for real-life use. First, that display. The Series 10 has the largest screen ever on an Apple Watch, about 30% more screen area than the Series 4. It's brighter outdoors too, hitting up to 2000 nits, which means you can actually read it in direct sunlight without squinting like you're staring into the sun. Second, the thickness. The Series 10 is 9.7 millimeters thin, which makes it the slimmest Apple Watch ever. For context, that's meaningfully thinner than a Series 9. It sounds like a small number, but your wrist notices it immediately. Third, the new S10 chip. It's faster than the S9, and it powers a new feature called on-device Siri processing for health data, meaning your health information never leaves the watch. That's both a performance win and a privacy win. Fourth, the depth gauge and water temperature sensor, which are genuinely useful for swimmers and anyone spending time near water. These aren't marketing specs, they do something real. Fifth, battery life. Apple promises 18 hours of standard use, which in practice lands around 16 to 18 hours depending on how hard you push it. Low power mode extends that significantly. It charges faster than previous models too, which helps close the gap. Sixth, watchOS 11. This brings new training load metrics, a Vitals app that tracks overnight health trends, and smarter activity suggestions. The software is doing real work here, not just moving icons around. In daily use, the Series 10 is fast and smooth. Apps open quickly, animations don't stutter, and the always-on display responds to wrist raises almost before you've finished raising your arm. It feels snappy in a way that previous generations occasionally didn't, especially when you had a lot of apps running. The heart rate and health tracking feel accurate and consistent. Wearing it through workouts, sleep, and a full day of meetings, it tracked without gaps or weird dropouts. The ECG app continues to be one of the most genuinely useful health features on any consumer device, and the new Vitals app gives you a morning snapshot of your overnight data that actually starts to feel like useful information after a few days of baseline. The thinner profile does create one quirk worth mentioning. Because the watch sits flatter, some people with very curved wrists find the sensors need a day or two to find their optimal position. It's not a problem, just something to be aware of during the adjustment period. Notifications are crisp, haptics feel precise without being aggressive, and Siri on the watch is genuinely faster and more reliable than it used to be. The overall feel is a device that gets out of your way and does what you ask it to do without drama. That sounds basic, but it's harder to pull off than it sounds. The first major strength is that redesigned form factor. The combination of a larger display in a thinner, lighter body is not a trade-off. It's an upgrade on every dimension at once. You get more screen real estate and less wrist bulk simultaneously. After wearing this daily, going back to an older Apple Watch feels noticeably clunkier. It's one of those changes that sounds incremental on paper but feels significant in practice. The second strength is the health tracking ecosystem, which on the Series 10 feels more complete than ever. The combination of ECG, blood oxygen, skin temperature, depth gauge, water temperature, and the new Vitals app means this watch is tracking your body in ways that can genuinely surface useful information. A friend of mine caught an irregular heart rhythm notification that turned into an actual doctor's visit. That's not a feature highlight in a press release. That's the watch doing something that matters. The third strength is how well everything integrates when you're already in the Apple ecosystem. If you have an iPhone, AirPods, and a Mac, the Series 10 slots in seamlessly. Handoff works reliably. Apple Pay on your wrist is still one of the most convenient things in daily life, and the watch face customization has gotten deep enough that you can make it genuinely feel personal. The first real con is battery life. 18 hours is enough to get through a full day, but just barely if you use the always-on display, do a workout, and use GPS heavily. If you want to track sleep as well, which the watch actively encourages, you're squeezing a 24-hour lifestyle into an 18-hour battery, which means you're charging it every single morning without exception. The faster charging helps, but the battery situation still requires a daily routine adjustment that not everyone loves. The second con is Android incompatibility. And yes, this is worth saying plainly. The Apple Watch requires an iPhone, full stop. If you share a household with Android users or you're considering switching platforms down the road, this watch becomes a paperweight. It's deeply locked to the Apple ecosystem in ways that Garmin and other competitors are not. The third con is the new band attachment system. Apple changed how bands connect on the Series 10, which means your collection of older Apple Watch bands may not fit without an adapter. If you've spent money on third-party or Apple-branded bands over the years, some of them won't work with this watch natively. For longtime Apple Watch users, that's a real hidden cost that deserves a heads up before you buy. Since Amazon reviews for this one are still rolling in, I pulled together some of the early buyer reactions making the rounds, and they're pretty representative of what people are actually experiencing. One buyer wrote, "Bought this to track my steps and ended up getting a cardiology referral. 5 stars, but not what I expected from a Tuesday." Another said, "My old watch band collection is now apparently decorative. My wallet is crying, but my wrist looks great." And then there's this gem. "I told myself I didn't need an upgrade. Wore it in the store for 30 seconds. Came home with the watch and a new sense of financial regret that my heart rate monitor immediately flagged as elevated stress." Jokes aside, the consistent theme from real buyers is that the thinner design genuinely surprises people in person. The health features have been more useful than expected, and the band compatibility issue is a genuine frustration that catches people off guard. Those three things keep coming up over and over, which tracks exactly with what I experienced. Here's where I land. Buy it if you're on a Series 6 or older, or if you've never owned an Apple Watch and you're ready to commit to the iPhone ecosystem. The design improvements, the health sensors, and the software on watchOS 11 make this the most complete version of the product Apple has ever shipped. Skip it if you're already on a Series 9 and you're happy with it. The improvements are real but not dramatic enough to justify the full price jump for a one-generation upgrade. Wait for the Series 11 or grab a discounted Series 9 right now. Either move makes sense. The Apple Watch Series 10 is a genuinely excellent product that earns its place as the top recommendation in its category. Drop a comment below. Are you upgrading to the Series 10 or holding off for now? Worth it or skip it? Let me know where you land. If this review saved you some research time, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel. And subscribe if you want a new, honest, no fluff review every single week. See you in the next one.